Hi there, I'm Salma Shilbaya. I've taught Arabic for over 6 years at a university level instruction. With a master's degree in applied linguistics of Arabic and Spanish, I'm a passionate language educator. During our series, I'm going to introduce you to the Arabic alphabet as well as some of the Middle East culture. By the end of our series, you're going to be able to write and read in Arabic using the letters, as well as have access to some of the phrases you can use on your own. So stay with me. Let's learn Arabic. Yalla bina. Hello everyone, ahlan wa sahlan. My name is Salma and I'm going to be your instructor for this show. Now, if you've always wanted to learn Arabic, this is the best opportunity to do just that. We're going to learn the Arabic alphabet, a few phrases, and also learn about the cultural concepts in the Middle East. So let's get started. Yalla bina. Yalla bina is Arabic for let's get started. We'll start off by talking about the variations of the Arabic language. There are 3 main variations. The first one is the classical Arabic. This is Arabic used in texts such as religious ones or poetry or things that are quite classical. The second form of Arabic is more popular and it is used for the written and read materials. So any books would be written in modern standard Arabic. Any formal programming on television would be in modern standard Arabic. And also any sort of formal setting, if I was addressing people and giving a speech, that would also be in modern standard Arabic. The last form, and perhaps the most practical one, is the spoken dialect variation of Arabic. Now, there are many dialects that are spoken in the Middle East. The most popular amongst them is the Egyptian dialect. That's because Egyptians have a lot of influence in terms of like mass media and a lot of television programming and shows and music and so forth. Another form of dialect that's popular also in the Middle East is the Moroccan. There's also Algerian. There's the Peninsula dialect, the Arabian Peninsula. So that includes Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, any Gulf states in that region. You also have the Levantine, and that's also becoming increasingly popular. The Levantine Arabic covers dialects that are spoken in Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, Palestine, in that region of the Middle East. So we're not going to really delve too much into all of these variations. We're going to focus more on what we use for writing and for reading, which is the modern standard Arabic. However, when we talk about a few phrases, I'll be able to give you some of those that are also spoken. Just like I've said earlier, Yalla bina, that's more of a spoken dialect. So you've already learned one thing. There are 28 letters in the Arabic alphabet. These include consonants and vowels, and in addition to that, there are 14 symbols. These symbols function as also vowel markings, as they're called sometimes, and they also function as grammatical markers. So we're going to cover these as we go on into our learning adventure. First of all, there are a few things to keep in mind. Arabic is written from right to left. It's also read from right to left. So if I was to pick up a book, I would actually open it from right to left. So here's the Arabic book that I have here with all the Arabic alphabet. See? And I would open it this way, and the numbers would correspond from right to left. This is very different, of course, than what we're used to in the English language. Even newspapers. So here's a newspaper. I would open it this way, right to left. Any sort of material or text would be opened from right to left and read from right to left. Now, the second thing that you should keep in mind is that all written text or words are always connected. So the handwriting is always going to be connected. Letters are never written separately to make up a word. Again, that's also a little different than what we're used to in the English language. The third point that is a little important, I would say, not so much at this point, but just for you to know, is that letters look differently at the beginning of a word, in the middle of a word, and also at the end of a word. And again, you'll be able to pick up on this once I show you examples. The fourth point is that Arabic has two different types of script. The first one is just simply the letters. So the 28 letters that I mentioned earlier, that would be the first type of script. The second type of script would have the vowel markings. I'm going to show you some examples of that. So when we look at Arabic calligraphy, for example, here I have all of the letters, and I also have these vowels, the 14 types of markings that I mentioned earlier. These are the vowels, and they usually go above and beneath the letters. Now, of course, you're unable to recognize that just yet because you're not familiar with it, but in the future, you definitely will be able to do that. I'll show you another example of the Arabic script that includes the markings. This is actually classical Arabic because it is a religious text. And again, you'll see here that there's a lot more going on. You could see the letters and a lot of markings on top of them and beneath them. Now, children's texts, as they're introduced to them in the schools, usually would have the vowel markings on them as new words are being introduced. But generally speaking, if I was to pick up a book, a children's book, I would not be able to find it. In this one, we see a few of them because it makes a big difference to the meaning and to the pronunciation. But in this book that I'm about to show you, you don't have any sort of vowel markings on the script. And this is a book with stories in it and no vowel markings. It looks a little more plain and simple. I'll show you one more example in a magazine. So this is a magazine, no vowel markings at all. Like here you could tell that there's no vowel markings. So what's the difference between the two different Arabic scripts? The first script, using just the letters, the 28 letters that I've talked about before, is used in most of the printed material that you'd find in the stores. So like magazines and books and even school textbooks, they would have that. It's made for the native Arabic speaker who's expected to have the level of proficiency to be able to understand the writing without any of the vowel markings on top. The other script with all the vowel markings on it is used to specify meaning and also pronunciation. Because these vowel markings are used for grammatical purposes as well as pronunciation, these texts would have them on them so that the reader would be able to understand specifically what is being written. So things like religious texts, as we have in the classical Arabic language, and also some religious texts that are just in modern standard Arabic, so books that are written about the Quran or the Bible or whatsoever, they would have the vowel markings on it to ensure accuracy. A lot of the school books that are written also for children, if they're introducing new material, they'll also have the vowel markings on them. And then once the material has been introduced, they'll be removed. So for all of you who are watching this show, you will probably want the vowel markings to begin with. So let's talk about sound for a little bit. Now, in Arabic, you're going to definitely be using a wider range of your mouth and throat positions to produce these sounds. So you kind of have to pay really close attention to the right muscles that you're using to produce each sound. In the beginning, it's a little more challenging with certain letters, but as you continue to train these muscles and use them, you can produce the sounds with a lot less effort. It helps that in the Arabic language, it is a phonetic language, so every letter has a one-to-one correspondence with the sound that it makes. So if you're going to have, for example, the first letter is alif, that's going to make the A sound, and that's going to always be the same way when it's written down. That's a little different than English because words like cats, which is a plural word, and dogs, which is also plural, cats ends with the s sound, which is like an S, versus dogs that ends with the Z sound, which is more like a Z, even though it's written down as an S. You're never going to see that type of difference in Arabic at all. Each letter will always correspond to the sound that it makes. It also helps to add that there are no silent letters in Arabic. Again, makes it a lot more easier. There are no compound letters that make a sound in Arabic. Each letter has its own sound. Again, makes things a lot more easy. Now that you've learned a lot about the Arabic language itself, you're probably very ready to start on the alphabet. We're going to start off with the first letter of the alphabet, and this letter is called alif. Alif. That is the name of the letter. The pronunciation that it corresponds with is actually the sound a, as in the word bad or the word father. So notice in the word bad, a is a little more frontal, the a sound, versus father, it's a little deeper. So both of these sounds correspond with this letter alif. And I have the transliteration here for you that you can kind of have in the background until you memorize it. Now, this letter is affected, the way that it's pronounced, whether it's a as in bad or as in father, by the letters that are surrounding it. So we'll do a little exercise, a tadrib. Tadrib means exercise, with these two words. Both of these words have the letter alif in them. Taba, taba, notice is pronounced with the frontal a, as in bad. Taba. Versus taba. Taba, the a here is more deep than this one, as in the word father. So taba versus taba. Both of them have the alif. In the next tadrib exercise, we have the word saha. Saha has the alif right in the middle, and it's frontal. The alif is pronounced as a, saha. Versus saha. Saha has the alif more deep. It sounds more like the word father, the a in father. Saha. Now, alif is considered to be, it functions as two different, in two different roles. The first role is as a long vowel, and for now, that's all that I want you to be concerned with, is it functioning as a long vowel. Again, that's hence the a sound, and we'll cover the next function later on. Now let's look at how the alif is written. Remember earlier I mentioned that all of the Arabic alphabet letters have a different look to them, or a different shape, depending on the position they take within a word. So in the beginning of a word, or in the middle of the word, or at the end of the word. In the beginning of a word, let's imagine this is the line in the paper. The alif would simply be a line. So going from up, down. That's in the beginning of a word. Okay? Now, in the middle of a word, alif would connect with the letter written before it, simply like this. So we'll imagine that this is the letter written before it, and here's the alif. Now, alif never ever connects ever to the letter that comes after it. So if alif comes at the end of a word, it'll simply be like this. Okay? And if there's a letter that will come after the alif anywhere, it will never connect to it. Now, a good tip to remember when writing the letter alif is once you're done writing it, to pick up your pen. That will remind you that this letter does not connect with the letters that follow it. The next letter is the letter ba, which is pronounced like the letter B in English, so it makes the sound B. Remember, it's a phonetic language, so we simply just make the sound of it, which is B. Let's do, yalla bina, we'll do a tadrib, an exercise. This word here is read as ba, so that's the sound B, ba. Bab, here we have two bas in the beginning and at the end. Bab. And then bait. Here we have just one ba in the beginning of the word, bait. Let's look at how ba is written in the beginning, middle, and final position of a word. In the beginning of a sentence, you would start from the right to the left on the line, and you'd put the dot underneath. There's just one dot for the letter ba. That's in the beginning. Now ba does connect from both sides, so right or left. In the middle, the ba would simply be the same as in the beginning, and it would connect with the following letter and also the previous letter. So we call these teeth because they stick out. And so you have one tooth and then a line to the left. And then finally at the end, the ba would be connected from the right, and you would simply write it fully on the line with the dot at the bottom. And that's how you write your ba. Ta is the third letter of the Arabic alphabet, and it is pronounced like the frontal T sound in English, like ta as in teeth. So this is the letter ta, pronounced like T as in frontal T in teeth. Let's do a tadrib so that we can hear how it sounds in words. So here we have ta. Again, we see the ta in the beginning of the word, ta. Toot. We see a ta in the beginning of the word and another ta at the end of the word, toot. Bint. We see a ta at the end of the word, bint. Now, let's practice writing the letter ta in the beginning, middle, and end. In the beginning of a word, it's very similar to the letter ba, except for it has two dots on top. Now, sometimes you'll see the two dots, and at other times, the dots may be connected. So this is just to get you familiar with how it would look on a text. Both of these are how the ta would be written in the beginning of a word. In the middle of a word, the ta again would be written very similarly, except for you'd have a letter that would connect before it. And you can also connect it from the right side. So the ta is a connecting letter from both sides. And then finally, and again, you can have this connected as well or with two dots. Finally, at the end of a word, the ta simply looks like it does on its own with two dots, or you can connect the dots and it can be connected from the right side of it. And that's your ta. Our last letter of the day is the letter tha, and tha is pronounced like the first sound in the word three. So tha, three. Now, Arabic is just like English in that it has two sounds for what we would call the TH combination. It also has the sound like the word that. For now, I want you to focus on the tha as in three. So let's do a tadrib and we'll hear how it sounds in the words. The first word here is tha. We see the tha in the beginning of the word, tha. Thabit. The tha here is also in the beginning of the word, thabit. And athath. Athath here has two thas in the second letter of the word and also at the end of the word. So now you have tha. And that's all the letters that we'll be covering today. Greetings are really important in the Middle East. It is expected of those who are coming in, like meeting a group of people, to initiate the greeting. So they would be the ones who would start the conversation by saying hi and meeting everybody and welcoming them. And then those who are sitting down would respond back to them. It's also important to note that men and women don't necessarily shake hands when they're greeting each other. Sometimes they do. A good tip to remember if you are the man is to just wait and see if the woman will initiate the handshake, and then you can shake her hands. If not, then you know that she doesn't shake hands. However, when it comes to women greeting each other, there's a lot of hugs and lots of kissing, the kissing on the cheeks. In some countries, women would give 2 kisses on the cheeks, 1 on each side. Other countries, it's just 1 kiss. And then in some other countries, it's like 3 to 4 kisses, or as much as they have like missed each other. They can kind of continue that greeting in that sense. And as people start to leave from a conversation or a setting, they would do the greetings or the goodbyes in the same manner. Again, men would not necessarily shake hands with women unless that was specified earlier or they shook hands earlier and they know that that was acceptable. Women would, again, kiss each other. There are never really short goodbyes in the Arab culture. So oftentimes they'll have like mini conversations. And again, it's just a way to show how welcoming and gracious they are and appreciative they are of those who they are talking to. Earlier in the program, I greeted you by saying ahlan wa sahlan. Greetings are very important in the Arabic language, and especially in the Middle East. Middle Easterners use very different greetings to greet each other, and we'll talk about that just now. Ahlan wa sahlan is the one that I used earlier. Ahlan wa sahlan literally means hello and welcome. It's predominantly used in North Africa, the Arab-speaking countries like Egypt. But you could pretty much use it with any other Arabic native speaker and they would understand you just fine. There is a specific reply for it. If you're talking to a male, you would say ahlan bik. So ahlan bik only if you're talking to a male. If you're talking to a female, you would say ahlan biki. And that would literally just mean welcome to you as well. This would probably be appropriate if you're welcoming people over to your house or if you're getting on the phone and welcoming their call almost. Another way to do that is to say marhaba or marhaban. This is used more in the Levantine Arabic-speaking countries like Syria, Lebanon, and Palestine. And again, you could either say marhaba or you could say marhaban. And there is also a specific reply for it. You can reply by just simply saying ahlan, or you could say marhabatain. And marhabatain is almost like double the greeting. So you wanna seem even more welcoming as the replier, because again, in the Middle East, it's a very welcoming type of environment. People like to feel welcomed and to feel greeted, extremely greeted, if you will. And that's why you have the marhabatain. Tain here would emphasize like double the greeting. So these are just 2 of the greetings, and we'll cover a few in just a moment. Sabah al-khair is actually good morning. Sabah al-khair. There is a specific response to that, and it would be sabah al-nur. Sabah al-nur. And this is pretty much used everywhere in the Middle East. And again, it's specific to good morning. Good evening is masa al-khair. Masa al-khair. Notice the al-khair is here and also in good morning. That just means good or goodness. Masa al-khair has the response of masa al-nur. You could also say just masa al-khair, the same thing, or masa al-nur, which is good evening, full of light, and so forth. And again, it just goes back to how welcoming and gracious and how much emphasis is put into greetings in the Arabic language. Another greeting that has more of a religious or Islamic in particular connotation is Assalamu alaikum, which literally means peace be upon you. It's quite popular in the Middle East, and you'd notice a lot of people using that greeting if they were passing by each other. Just generally, they would say Assalamu alaikum. Another popular version of Assalamu alaikum that doesn't necessarily take on as much of a religious connotation is the word salam, and salam literally means peace. You'd notice a lot of the young population using this instead to kind of shorten the longer Assalamu alaikum, and also to make it more acceptable and appropriate for others who may not necessarily be Muslim. So they'd simply say salam, and then that would work as just saying hello. We have learned so much information today, so I want to make sure that we review it so that you can take notes in case you've missed anything. We started off by learning about the Arabic language. Basically, there are 3 variations. The first one being the classical Arabic. The second one is the modern standard Arabic, and that is what we're focusing on during this show. That will help you read and write any sort of material and texts, as well as also understand news and television news and any sort of formal programming. And then finally, the third variation is the spoken form of Arabic, or the different dialects that exist within the Middle East. We'll be picking up on these as we go along into the show, just a few phrases here and there. Some of those phrases I just recently covered. To review, let's talk about them. We have ahlan wa sahlan, which is welcome. Marhaba, again, another form of saying welcome. You could say marhabatain as a response to say welcome. We've also learned sabah al-khair, which is good morning. Masa al-khair, and that's good evening. The Islamic greeting of peace, Assalamu alaikum. And the shortened version of that, which is salam, and that's also has less of an Islamic connotation to it. These are just some of the phrases that we've learned. We've also learned the word tadrib, and we use that when we're talking about exercises as we were reviewing the letters. The letters that we've done so far are alif, and that makes the long vowel a sound. Ba, and that's just like the English B sound. Ta, or you can connect the dots, remember? And that's like the frontal T sound, as in the word teeth. And tha, which is like the sound TH in the word 3. We know that ba, ta, and tha connect from both sides. And we also know that alif connects only from the right side, and it does not connect with any letters that come after it. That is all that we've learned during the show. I want to thank you all for joining me, and I want you to stay tuned, continue practicing. There are a few resources that I'd like to recommend. There's a book called Alif Ba, which is what? The first 2 letters of the Arabic alphabet. This book you can easily find on Amazon or online. It's written by Kristen Brustad, and you could just look it up. There are also tons of resources for beginning Arabic that I'm sure you can Google that and see if you can find it and bring it in and review as we continue the show. And I'll see you next time. Ma salama.